Good day, brothers and sisters. Welcome to Alex Sass Show. Well, it's not just my show. Glenn is here too, and he's amazing. He's a huge part of this. I'm just going to remind you really quick to do your thing, click the subscribe button and the like button because, we are grateful and so are you. And that's why you're pressing all those buttons, not for any other reason. Glenn, beautiful spring day. How you doing today?
Oh, fantastic. Got up this morning, beautiful day, said, going to do a good, quick 20 kilometer, over 20 kilometers, about 14 miles on a bike sprint. Come back full of energy. Nothing like that to wake you up and bring you into the new realm here. I think we're going to start the program. I love when we start with comedy. I love it, the comedy. And what comedy could you not have without Mr. Just-in-Time Trudeau?
Well, it is a health, we do share a lot of health tips, and we know how good laughter is for you. So let's not prolong your...
Bring him up, big guy.
I have a little confession to make. I have a slight learning disability.
No kidding.
And it's not one that any teacher ever told me about. It was never addressed.
Book writes itself.
It was never responded to. And I only discovered it while I was doing my Bachelor of Education, and we were going through the different possibilities of learning disabilities, and all of a sudden I realized,
somehow I knew.
Holy smokes, that's me.
Could have told you that in 30
It's not a
seconds.
big one, but it's definitely there. I am dysnumeric. What that means is I have an inability to handle small numbers and little calculations, those easy things that people do so well. I mean,
Big numbers,
13
too.
plus 14.
Oh, that's big.
27? Under pressure, it's even worse. So, if I pick up numbers and try to do it, I have a hard time with it. It means I can't remember telephone numbers. However...
All right, I had Glenn. That's your prime minister, by the way.
No. Hell no. Canadians, you voted for him. I mean, now that you can't admit it, it's coming out there, but you voted for him. So this is why we're in that pickle I was explaining in the last segment we did.
Oh man, this is just the part one.
Yes. You know if you used your credit card for the first time. If you're using your credit card to invest in a huge flat screen TV home theater system for your basement, okay. That's going to be something you're going to be paying off for a while. But if you use your credit card to go back to school, or if you use your credit card, you go into debt to build an expansion on your house that you're then going to be able to sell your house for more. If you're making investments that are going to return, that is how you grow a strong economy. Because quite frankly, confident economies invest in themselves. And that's exactly what Canada has done, and that's why Canada is looking so good for the future. And our fiscal path is responsible, restrained, and is going to leave people with more opportunities, not burden, in the coming years. So thank you very much, Phil.
Which part of responsible is like a 200 billion increase in the government spending?
I don't know, but I said, Canadians, you voted for this guy at a couple of occasions. I don't know what you saw in him, but, he's trying to tell us how to use credit, how to spend credit properly. Under his watch, now Canada, the country of Canada, is in the most debt it's ever been. The average Canadian, his personal debt's the highest it's ever been. And he's going to tell us how to solve our problems while he's creating even a bigger one.
But he did sound like that, what was a Mulvaney character? They call her actress on the news somehow.
The actress, yeah. In Hollywood, the female actors, they don't like to be called actresses. They're all actors. But here you have a guy who's acting, and he wants to be called an actress. I mean... It's the illogic of everything. Listening to Trudeau and the way he was so dramatic like that, I think they could have chose him for the Bud Light commercial.
Yeah, especially when he said, what did he say? I am this, what? What was the disorder he quoted? I don't even know.
Dysnumerical?
Oh, dysnumerical. Yeah. Well, yeah, Mulvaney would have been a better character. Let's
Disconnected.
Hi. Impressive carrying skills, right? I got some Bud Lights for us. So, I kept hearing about this thing called March Madness, and I thought we were all just having a hectic month, but it turns out it has something to do with sports. And I'm not sure exactly which sport, but either way, it's a cause to celebrate. This month, I celebrated my day 365 of womanhood, and Bud Light sent me possibly the best gift ever, a can with my face on it. Check out my Instagram story to see how you can enjoy March Madness with Bud Light.
I'm not doing that. Okay. Glenn. Well, that's a good economic decision for the
corporation.
For the corporation, right?
Bud
That's
Light. They fired the CEO, the woman, the boss there. She came in and thought this would be a good idea.
They did.
They got like a $5 billion hit on the stock market, like within a week after this came out.
Who was the advisor on the board? Christian or Justin?
I don't know, but I could have saw Justin doing that too. It would have been, would have gave a little bit more credibility. They probably would have only lost $2.5 billion.
$2.5 billion. Yeah, it would have been a better choice. I agree that. But I would think like a Bud Light. They even use blue cans. It's the blue color. Like, how do you make this mistake? Like, how stupid do you got to be, like, to not know your audience, not to. Or is it all by design? Let's just kill the economy. Let's hire people that are dumb, that woke. Like, Trump did say, everything woke goes to what, right?
Yeah.
And that's really feels like everything's by design, like you said it. It's awful, awful, awful. Is this thing the story that we try not to follow because we already knew the answers? The story of the leaks on the Discord. The national security documents were leaked by allegedly, the 21-year-old Air National Guardsman suspected of leaking classified documents. For some reason, why did FBI arrested him, right? That was all over the news. It shouldn't be like the Department of Defense, because that's a national security thing?
Seems like nothing but a giant smoke screen. Okay, well, it's not even big. They're dramatizing it as though it's big.
Let's watch a little bit of it.
Fallout intensifying after the dramatic arrest of 21-year-old Jack Teixeira.
Dramatic, yeah, that's drama, yeah.
Drawn, heavily armed federal agents took the Air National Guardsman into custody Thursday afternoon. The government has accused Teixeira of leaking hundreds of classified documents from the Pentagon.
The Justice Department arrested Jack Douglas Teixeira in connection with an investigation into alleged unauthorized removal, retention, and transmission of classified national defense information.
Teixeira, who was recently promoted to
my question right away off the bat, Glenn. Where did he get those documents from? Like, how does he he's just a guardsman. Like, where he gets the access to the national? I believe here's where I'm thinking.
You sure that's not Putin's son?
He could be a double agent of sort. Yeah, 100%. That is possible. I watched a lot of movies about that. What I believe is happening, that's just kind of a scapegoat, because they have to somehow justify and switch attention from the actual story, what happened. And the actual story is what, Glenn? That the war isn't what we thought it is. And actually here we knew, right? We knew all along the war was never about Ukraine and Russia and, imperialism and how terrible Russians are and all that stuff. We knew, and we've been telling this for months and months and months, that it's not what they tell you on TV. As a matter of fact, if you still believe what they tell you on TV, watch a lot more of our show. We'll teach you how to discern.
Ukraine is being used as a proxy. So the people are dying over there. They're sending people to war on both sides. But actually, that's like the West against the Russians. And they're just using the Ukrainians. The same thing as when Russia was with Iran and America was with Iraq during that war. That was during the big Cold War.
Well, Korea, we can use multiple examples. There's more than Syria, most recent one. Well, don't take our word for it. Let's listen to Tucker.
Among other places, on Twitter. And the slides show that this is, in fact, not Ukraine's war. It's our war. The United States is a direct combatant in a war against Russia. as we speak, American soldiers are fighting Russian soldiers. So this is not a regional conflict in Eastern Europe. This is a hot war between the two primary nuclear superpowers on Earth. And yet this war has never been formally declared. It has not been authorized by Congress. And for that reason, this war is a violation of American law. It is a crime.
Actually, I just wanted to say something, Alex. This is a globalist war against the rising powers that are challenging the globalists. They have still their minions in control of the certain branches in the American military. The same thing as they have control like in the Euro or in Canada also, by the way. That's why we keep sending money over there. But they're going to lose. It's not about losing the war. There's going to be a challenge at the top of the world planners who control the so-called world leaders, which just run the countries. They're the middlemen between what we say, what we see, and what the top people do and want.
Okay, so quick question then: why is Poland is so warlike? Why it is so aggressive in this thing? Why they keeping up? We keep keeping up. You know, they claiming that if the West fails in Ukraine, well, it's not. You know, Europeans been saying it for months and months and months. You know, they actually admit it if UN or NATO or EU fails in Ukraine, then the Western democracy or the Western way of life fails in general.
They are going to fail. It already failed. Ukraine failed a long time ago. What they failed is it was in unifying their country to make one proud country of good people. But no, they did everything they could to divide up their people, and now they're in this proxy war. And I also believe that Poland's economy was doing very, very good a couple of years ago, but things now have seemed to have slowed down exponentially, and they need another reason to blame on this huge slowdown.
Is it because they chose the wrong side? Is it like it's the U.S. puppet state? Like, well, don't take my word for it. Look, the Poland blast Macron call for autonomy from U.S. Apparently, Macron's trying to save his butt with all the numerous protests that are happening in France, right?
Yeah,
you don't see it anywhere on the news, by the way.
Yeah,
nowhere on the news.
No, not in the Western news. No, can't have that because maybe the people might stand up here and start protesting what's going on. But when the economy rolls over and people get hurt, then you're going to see some protests because they're going to say, "Hey, this is not like I don't like this. We got to have to do something." You have to wait this long to to get something going. To change? Do you have to hit rock bottom like all the other countries before you say, "Well, I don't like it down here. I want to go back up"?
Yeah, and look at on the screen. The protesters are everywhere, and it's been going for weeks and weeks and weeks. Just a few weeks ago, they were protesting in front of BlackRock headquarters. Didn't we just protest? They broke into the headquarters.
Yeah, this is the thing just about raising the retirement age from 62 to 64. I mean, there's a lot of people who live past 64 today, like way past 64. The average age, life expectancy used to be in the late 60s and early 70 years old, but now it's late 70s and 80s. And so the pensions obviously would be exposed as a giant Ponzi scheme. You would have more people taking out at the top longer, and you don't have enough people putting in at the bottom. So they're taking money out of their work right now to support other people, and there's going to be no money for them when they need the support.
It seems like a perfect storm altogether. I mean, this is not the story I really wanted to cover right away, but I guess we'll segue to that anyway, because the $1 trillion industry, which is a looming crisis, right, for the whole world, I guess, it's globally. The commercial real estate could be the next domino to fall.
It's going to fall, and it's going to get hard on the banks again within the next 6 to 12 months. They say up to 20% of commercial real estate is empty. So when these real estate owners, pension funds, all these plans and everything that own all these buildings, they bought them when times were good, and they leveraged against their investments to buy more because the investment kept going up in value. So they would take equity out of that and buy another one and another one. Now they're over leveraged, and we're going to be entering the biggest slowdown that we ever saw. So all these owners are just going to be giving the keys back to the banks. So the banks are going to have all these non-performing assets on their balance sheet, and they're going to need help to stay solvent. So either the government is going to bail them out, or with people protesting, maybe even the banks will use people's depositors' money as bail-ins.
And most people don't realize that but I guess it's part of the design. I guess this is nothing. It's to be predicted. If you walk around just Montreal, commercial space is empty, or the storefronts are killed, right? We think about, the Amazon killed it during the pandemic, because they had to. The government told you to close mom and pop store because you're going to kill your next door neighbor, your grandmother, or your overweight cousin. I don't know. And then, but you didn't realize also, and I think it's still happening. A lot of remote from home working still continues and goes on, and that's one of the reasons why commercial real estate, because now, like, if I'm running the business and I ran it for a year with people staying home, and I was able to function as a business, why would I spend money for the office space? It makes no sense.
Yeah, you have big corporations. They have, let's say, 8 floors of a complex downtown. And, half their people spend most of the time working at home now. So they go from 8 floors renting. Now they're only going to take 4 floors when it's time to renew the lease. And they're going to get it for a better price too, right? Because the company knows that there's other landlords who are looking for people to rent their space too. So the worst case scenario for those companies is that their expenses per square foot stay the same. That's the worst case scenario for them.
And it's not getting better for dollar in general, like in the Western democracy, right? The Western world, U.S. national debt to skyrocket. Interest payments and the shift to clean energy will add to government spending and organization warrants.
That's the IMF, the International Monetary Fraud.
Can't really believe anything they say anyway.
I mean, fund.
Maybe they're preparing to bail out the U.S. with some kind of additional loan because quantitative easing is no longer working. So maybe we're looking for IMF handout. Can U.S. receive an IMF handout? Is that even feasible? Like, is that something in the works?
Well, if the IMF still has liquidity to hand out, the IMF is it's tied for second of the world central banks. The other one it's tied with is the World Bank. The one that sits on top is the Bank of International Settlements, and they're also, all the banks are warning that the next year's production levels, the
GDP,
no, not the chat GPT,
GDP,
gross domestic product.
Yeah.
They say it's not going to be high enough or good enough to get over the problems that are coming.
Well, thanks. You don't think the sanctions have anything to do with that and ongoing demolition of the world via war?
Yeah, we'll blame Russia for that one. No, everything has been engineered, okay? The same thing is we're going to be engineered going into a new paradigm, a new monetary system, a new structure in the world order, and it's going to affect a lot of people. But, hey, there's quite a few people who can do very well during tough times. Other people will just throw up their hands and say, help me, government, help me. That type of mentality is why we're in this predicament in the first place. When you have mass amounts of your population asking for the government to help them out, well, that means they're relinquishing their power to the government. So the government has more power because the average individual is disempowered. They gave up their responsibility.
And speaking of sanctions, just in time, UN seeking to reconnect some Russian banks to the SWIFTs. Well, the SWIFT is the system which banks use to transfer funds between international banks, etc. And that was one of the sanctions imposed on Russia, is to disconnect Russia from the SWIFT, so there's no international dealings going on. And there's other systems that they use to transfer money with BRIC, etc. But desperate times call for desperate measures. And, we discussed, we never really discussed it here, actually, Glenn, but in your opinion, how long this charade can keep up with isolating Russia as this artificial boogeyman in the world? And, you can't keep this economy, economy full of resources that the world is in need for. You can't keep it isolated. You can basically shooting yourself in the foot.
Well, if the people in the West just want to be entertained and they don't realize what's really going on, then they're going to have a tough time, because this has all been engineered and it's the way it's going to be. A lot of the world is moving away from the SWIFT banking transaction system, which was, using the U.S. dollar, the world reserve currency, the petrodollar, as its main trading hub. But now many countries, it started with the BRICS nation, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They wanted to have their own payment system, and the amount of other countries, big countries, that want to join on to this, it's because they see the last days in the very near future for the SWIFT system, and they don't want to be caught when the music stops.
Well, yeah, India's new foreign trade policy aims to smash dollar hegemony. The Chinese yuan may be the preferred foil for the rupee to usher a new multipolar order for global trade. Well, it makes sense, right? They're neighbors. They're literally sharing the largest border. Why can't they directly trade with each other? Why do they have to use dollar for intermediary? That absolutely never made sense to me, actually.
Yeah, and India is soon to take over from China as the most populated country in the world. And they have very good demographics. In other words, very young age. So that's a highly educated, too. So that's going to be the new place to take over, and it's right beside China. So that's going to be a creation of a superpower again.
Speaking of BRICS, like you mentioned, even Lula is socialist as he sounds. Brazil, yeah. Well, a lot of people not really happy that he got elected. There were a lot of people say there was a lot of what do they call it? Election inconsistencies.
Fraud, like we had in America, like we have in Canada.
Well, people voted for Justin according to the election integrity. But listen to Lula. Oh, if there is sound.
Que todos os países estão obrigados a fazer seu comércio lastreado no dólar.
Every night I ask myself, why do people still rely on the dollar for trade?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask yourself why you didn't learn Portuguese.
Apparently, I know it if I can read the English subtitles. There's so the question that arises right off the bat is like, why do people still use English language as the official international language? Before it used to be French, and Quebecers would love it, right? The international language of policy was French. And now they switched it to English. There's a fable I heard that there's a devil or like a demon in the world, and his name is 26 letters of English alphabet. You never heard that one? No, you did. So I just put that thought. So yes, even Lula was on that path. So, and that's one of the big economies, right, in the world.
Yeah, that's the biggest population in South America. And there's other countries in South America, too, who are joining that ideology of doing trade outside of the SWIFT system. So the ones that are going to be left are going to be the Euro, England, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, United States. Even Mexico is really actively having talks about working and doing trade outside of the SWIFT system, but they may be doing both sides.
Well, they're not that stupid. They're neighbors. Yeah, Mexicans, I believe, were always smart neighbors to U.S. They're not going to shoot themselves on the left foot.
The
but
biggest silver producers in the world, by the way. Okay? And silver is a commodity that's really been engineered to be undervalued. And when they let that one pop, that's going to be very beneficial for Mexico and for people who have silver bullion.
why do you think it's undervalued? For what purpose? Just to artificially to raise the gold value?
No, everything is engineered so that the engineers can make more money when they decide, to let it go. What happens is it flushes other people out of the market. They get impatient. Oh, this is never going to go up. It doesn't make sense. You have gold near its all-time high right now trading, and silver is trading half at its all-time high. And they usually trade relatively in tandem with each other. But when gold goes up, let's say if gold goes up 50%, silver will go up 150%. Gold is the money of kings, silver is the money of the people. And that's what drives the price up, will be the demand. That's what will take over from the artificial engineering, the control of the price.
Mm-hmm. So how do you think? Okay, so the economy is really changing. There is no doubt about it. When they engineered the crisis, like things like outsourcing, right? That kind of sort of killed partially the U.S. economy or the Western world economy when they outsourced things to China and India and other Asian countries. Do you think the same thing, like people actually, because they had an experience with things like outsourcing human resources and production, do you think now the biggest threat to the old ways of life is the Chat GPT or like the open source AI and all that stuff? Is that why we see a lot of regulations being put on that, or maybe even banned in some countries, including the EU?
Yeah, well, the Chat GPT, it's a technology that can make itself too strong. There has to be perimeters around it. There has to be controls. Perimeters in place that'll trip the system when it overloads, because it will try to outdo itself more than humans, make itself feel like it's more important. They have been saying that this artificial intelligence has reached sentience.
So Skynet. So we're actually living in the time of Skynet, which is the Terminator, which is like the first steps to Matrix, right? Like predictive programming, because we always talk about 1984 and we have some other scary movies like Terminator, and if the Terminator part of predictive programming, I'd rather live in 1984. Do you understand? Like if we compare those two realities, I choose 1984.
Yeah, a lot of countries want to slow down the Chat GPT because they're realizing they're bringing back their manufacturing. The reason why all manufacturing, let's say so much manufacturing in North America was offshored, was because the biggest expense in business is salaries. So if you can bring down the labor costs, then your corporation has more margin. You make more money, more profits. So this is the reason why they offshored it. And of course, the people over here were happy because it kept the prices of the products lower. But now all the jobs go there, the quality jobs go away, and we're left with fictitious type jobs. They're not, the sort of quality of life diminishes now in the West. So they're calling for the manufacturing to come back, as what Mr. Trump wanted.
Well, Chat GPT, right? It's already banned in Italy, and I constantly, like, we use it for our podcast to generate like tag words and descriptions and names of our episodes. We don't really use it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you didn't know that?
No. You surprised me, big guy. You already have a relationship with this artificial intelligence.
I try to make friends, make friends with them first. Make friends with the robot. Maybe like when the things go south, you'll be like, oh no, he's all right.
I wonder if you're going to make such good friends with the Chat GPT, you won't need me anymore.
That's not true. I need somebody to hug. I can't really hug Chat GPT.
It's like getting hugged by a tree.
Well, it's true. Like I'm going to the ChatGPT, Glenn, and I look for different things that we can use it for our purposes here, like any kind of assistance. And a lot of tips I get, like for personal assistant, for example, administrative assistant. There's ChatGPT that can create your social posts for a week for your business, etc. It can map out, not just a schedule, but actually what you should put and how. And I just posted it on Instagram. There's like a lot of algorithms that are actually constantly put out by engineers that you can use to achieve certain goals. I actually don't know exactly what I'm doing with this. I'm still kind of like really, really fresh to it. But there's a lot of resource there that teach you how to basically use it to your advantage, where before you would rely on professionals who you would pay. So you're ultimately cutting out those professionals out of the chain, out of production chain. You no longer need them. Like, and it's really is resourceful. Like, for example, even though, I'm not doing advertising, but we're using things like Canva online to create our thumbnails and stuff like this. It's sort of kind of AI-ish in terms of like how it helps you design and create sort of any kind of graphic features for your business. You don't really need to do much. You just replace the wording, and you have and there's ChatGPT that can actually create something from scratch based on your need. So now you don't have to pay graphic designer. Now we did a story a few weeks ago on the remember on the company, the guy who created some kind of a legal assistance company that basically puts lawyers out of job. You can get medical advices. We have cars that drives themselves.
Just read this morning that preschoolers, young children, would prefer to be taught by a robot. So, as I was warning a couple of girls in the gym who are teachers, the education system could start being revamped too. The only thing they want to do is slow down the speed at which this technology is coming out. That's all. To make it easier to adapt to it.
Or just because there's people still highly invested into it, and people like, the prime example of how people that bankrolling a lot of stuff or controlling industries that want this thing to come out. We'll use examples like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. Why there's no pipelines in North America, or not that many pipelines, especially between Canada and US, is because Warren Buffett and Bill Gates own all the shares of the
railroads.
Exactly.
And they want to transport all the energies by the railroads, which is, as we know, not the safest, is it, big guy?
Well, yeah, we actually did discover that with the infrastructure crumbling. There's a railroad accident every day, or maybe even twice a day in North America. And we have just like the one that in Ohio, in Palestine, Ohio. Just recently, we had a Loch Megantic. That's a big one. A lot of people died in this one. But the environmentalists will tell you that it's much more worse for environment to put the pipelines. Anyway, I agree. There's other sources of energy that we're not tapping into, like all kinds of Tesla technology that we can work with. But there's something to be said for evolution, and like technologies like ChatGPT and other discoveries that I'm pretty sure, like all those alternative energy sources. If you even look up, there's a guy in Africa that created a like Tesla type of technology for the TV. He runs the TV without having it plugged into any kind of electrical source.
Pulls the electricity energy from the ether.
Yeah. And the same thing, there's cars that are like this, and there were electric cars in the turn of the century. You can look at the pictures. There were electric cars. We're thinking, oh, we live in such a progressive world. No, the first cars were the electric cars, apparently. And same way, they didn't run on the batteries. They had some kind of converter device where they received the electricity from the ether. And don't ask me. I'm not trying to be a physicist or scientist here. We'll probably do a show on something like this. It's a really fascinating subject. But another interesting thing, like food production, right, Glenn? We now they're making artificial meat. They're printing meat out of some protein. We're making bugs. We're growing bugs instead of chickens. And it started with things like GMOs, right? Ukraine, by the way, was the biggest
exporter of wheat in the world, wasn't it? Or biggest
and not-
producer of wheat.
and not just a regular producer. It was the biggest market for GMO wheat as well. Well, why wouldn't you if it's like if it produces like what is it, like 15% of all the wheat in the world or whatever, and like maybe like 14% of that was GMO. You know, and who makes the GMO kind of stuff? Think companies like Bayer, and Bayer's what? It's a pharmaceutical company. Believe it or not.
DuPont. Yeah.
DuPont and all that stuff. So there's and now like you can see the story, the EU nations, the whole thing with the Ukraine grain, 1,500 tons shipment contaminated with a banned pesticide. You know, anything to do for the money. Like just I had a argument with a friend, like he said, well, you know, aren't you rather feed hungry people? Well, yeah, I'd rather feed hungry people, but not with poison.
That was Slovakia who's opposing those grain shipments. But we were talking about Poland before, and I read earlier that Poland too has a problem. The farmers blocked the grain shipments coming into Poland from Ukraine.
Yeah, because it undermines the farming industry, because they get it for dirt nothing. Basically, it's stolen. The few, and again, I cannot confirm myself personally, but there were a lot of videos on the internet, straight up Polish interest would go to Ukraine and remove topsoil from the fields of Ukraine and bring it, because that's the
most fertile
soil, and they would bring it to Poland for their farming needs. So like that country is being ravished and robbed and uses the the laundering
practices.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just it's a corrupt. Its place is all corrupt. The leadership is all corrupt. Puppet Zelensky, corrupt. Like like Biden, like our leader here in Canada. If you want to call that a leader, don't vote for him again. I think he's going to be gone after this one, actually.
But he's not corrupt, man. We just realized he's on the spectrum. He admitted it. He's on the spectrum.
Well, I think he needs for a checkup. See how many marbles he's missing up there.
Did you see that story for the electric car story?
Business Digest, and the great Steve Forbes, Forbes Media Chairman, Editor-in-Chief, and author of the excellent book, Inflation. I want to talk about the economy and Fed and all that stuff, inflation. Steve Forbes, though, I go to you. I appeal to your reasonableness. This is an unbelievable story, taking over the car business and putting an end to the fossil fuel business.
Well, you summed it up aptly. Everything about it. And they're not dreamers, they're nightmares. They're out to destroy this country, destroy the economy, take us back to the cave days. They'll live well, but the rest of us are going to be impoverished. The world will be impoverished. China will control the world. Is that the kind of world we want? And so I think this is going to be beaten in the courts. I think the Republicans have to really get ginned up, combine this with those crazy IRS agents they're about to loose on the American people, and say no funding. And by golly, if that means shutting down the government, so what? We're here to save America, not to bail out Joe Biden.
Well, it's going back to that zero emission, the carbon-free existence, meaning like human-free existence, because we're carbon-based life.
It's just another way for the government to control the people. You do what we say. We'll let you elect us. And then we're going to tell you how to live. Does that sound like democracy to you, Big A?
Democracy never really existed, I don't believe. Did it really? Can democracy exist if the nature of the person is corrupt? Under what circumstances democracy can exist?
Oh, champ, Plato has said that he never had faith in democracy. He said, just have a conversation with the average voter. You're saying the average person chooses really not to know too much. They're too busy just doing their game in life, trying to keep up because everything is changing so quickly. They're just trying to pay the bills. By the way, 46% of Canadians are $200 away from not being able to cover all their expenses every month. And 30% of Canadians are actually not covering their expenses. They're going into more debt. They're asking for a handout. They're using their credit cards. I guess they didn't listen to Justin Trudeau on how to invest with credit, like at the beginning of this video.
Well, if you listen to Justin Trudeau and how to... well, I guess Germany listened to Justin Trudeau because, they stop receiving gas via Nord Streams, and they allowed that to be demolished by the parties that we're all aware of. The Americans did it. They say, oh, we will not let, the Nord Stream happen under any circumstances. And now nuclear power shut down, all over Germany. And guess what? Where do they get the fuel for the nuclear power plants? Russia. Ooh, right? Ooh. So I don't know if this article says this, but Germany plans shutdown for all its remaining nuclear power plants, risk causing power shortage, one industry group in the country has warned. Do they say it's coming from Russia anywhere in here?
Champ, the new nuclear power plants, the small SMRs, small modular reactors, they're so much more advanced and safe. Like if you're going to take down a nuclear plant, make sure you have a new modern style going up, but smaller one where you can make many other smaller ones.
Yeah, the article doesn't mention that the nuclear fuel, is actually being sold by Russians to the Germany, just like the gas. And now they running. Well, apparently Germany still receives gas from Russia, but not directly from Russia. Maybe they buy it from Italy, who buys it from Turkey or China or Saudis or whatever, but it's still leaving Russia.
I think Germany is number one in the world, right, for energy produced by non-fossil fuels and from non-nuclear. Like I think they're number one for solar and wind power.
And who cares?
Well, I guess they do over there when they say, "Hey, we're the lights are out." We had a little bit of a scare like that for last week during the another little ice storm 2.0. And you had some people didn't have power for a couple of days. And that's a hit. You don't realize what you have until you don't have it anymore.
And that's an interesting thing. How many people you think survive? Actually, let's say, okay, EMP goes off, electromagnetic pulse. It doesn't have to be a nuke or something. I don't know, solar flare, and then shuts down the electric infrastructure. How many people will actually, like, the produce goes bad within a week, right? Like with generators. Okay, you may have generators running to keep certain fridges going, but perishables will be gone within the week.
And not only that, I mean, most people pay with a card. So if your electricity is down, the card's not going to work. It's good to have some cash around the house, for a rainy day.
Well, if I don't have cash and I need to feed my family, you are not going to stop me if I need to feed my family. I'm going to store grabbing all the food.
Yeah, like everybody else.
Like everybody else would. But that means that then that's, if that comes down to that, we saw what the riots in the United States did. That, like if you have a couple of hundred people running into a grocery store, it's empty within minutes.
Yeah, and the security guard, he'd be the first one.
He'll be the first one.
Of course.
And the police can't do nothing because it's like, well, there's thousands of them. And it's in every store. There's not enough resources.
Yeah.
And then what? That food's going to run out. You're going to ransack that food. Okay, that will last you another week. Plus, it's okay. You would have to start. You can't cook that food because there's no electricity. You'd have to start fires and all that stuff. So there's probably going to be a lot of damage due to that. Thank God some people have barbecues and they can be resourceful. But then people will be stealing from each other. Maybe not so lucky ones that didn't get to go to the store on time.
That's a doomsday scenario.
Doomsday scenario.
But during these scenarios, these doomsday, these troubled times, the good thing that happens is people end up coming together out of necessity. You see, the humanitarian in us starts wanting to help out other people because we become more involved with empathy. We feel what the other person is going through. So if we're in a better position, we want to help other people too. That's the good thing about rough times, actually.
And if the world is going to hell, quite literally, I guess my advice is get out of the city. That's the first thing. Because you probably have more access to things like water, fresh water outside the city versus inside the city. Like that's another thing we didn't discuss. Like the water treatment plants will go down. You're not going to have water in your building as well. Like it's not going to last forever.
Yeah, they usually have the big power generators that'll run it, but they'll end up running out too. But that's, like I said, doomsday scenario. We're too advanced for that to happen like it did many, many years ago in war times and stuff like that,
But we did have this ice storm in 98? Remember?
25 years ago.
25 years ago. That lasted for a few weeks. People had no energy. Yeah. And people, you're right, people came together. My friend, she has a house somewhere where she was lucky enough not to lose electricity. And it was big enough to invite few families. So yeah, people do come together and people do look out for each other. And that's a good way to finish the show, Glenn. Brothers and sisters, look out for each other. As a matter of fact, after you watch this show, maybe pick a friend. Maybe pick a friend that you think needs your attention. Call them, see how they're doing. You don't need to help with anything specifically. Just inquire how they're doing. Just cheer them up. Maybe it's all we need. It's amazing how little encouragement human beings need to do well. Just call them, inquire how they're doing, and encourage them with something.
We're one big family. So let's do everything we can to make it a happy big family.
Good way to finish the show. We'll see you on the next one, brothers and sisters.